the thing I like about you. Just the thing I like about you.
I'm Kristie Schwarz, and this is Liz. I'm going to butcher her last name because I always do. So
Try it. Yeah,
Hi.
I'm Liz Osowiecki from the State Center. Yeah.
And we're here to talk to you about healthy relationships and being in control of your relationships.
Yes,
Exactly. So you can see.
So yeah, like we're going to be talking about the importance of healthy relationship education, because that's something that we specialize in, is giving these programs, these healthy relationship programs. So we're going to talk about why is it important to have these programs and incorporate them into the classroom and into the school. So first we want to talk about what is even going on.
So what is dating abuse? So dating abuse is a pattern of control that escalates over time. I'm sure we've all heard about it. It's very much in the media right now about abuse and sexual inappropriateness. So we want to make sure that our young people are educated about this as well. So really making sure that everyone has a clear understanding of what is abuse.
Exactly. So the key words that we highlighted here is that idea that dating abuse is about control. Sometimes we think that it's about physical abuse. And we think that this kind of stuff, domestic violence, is a violent physical act that happens within the home. Kind of makes sense because that's exactly what we term it as, domestic violence. But dating abuse and dating violence is any type of power and control and inequality within a relationship. So we're going to talk about all the different ways that that power is used in these kinds of relationships. That escalation is important too, because what we always tell to the high schoolers is that if you went out on a first date with someone and they reached across because they didn't like what you ordered and punched you in the face, you probably wouldn't go out with them again. It's just a matter of fact. So it's important to recognize that that's not how it starts, and to think that that's how abusive relationships, that's how we can tell what to choose, then that's why we need this kind of education.
So what type of dating abuse is there? So we're all, I'm sure, very familiar, we're all professionals in the room, but just to go over it once again, we do have psychological and emotional abuse. Sometimes these are split apart, sometimes they're together, because kind of when you impact somebody's emotions, you're also impacting them psychologically, so we kind of put this together. So it's shaming, it's bullying, it's name calling, it's that boy or girl or partner that's constantly telling you you're no good, or you look fat, or you're ugly, or you're never good enough, or you can't do anything right. That's that type of abuse that we're talking about. Stalking. This, a lot of times, people don't always assume is abuse, right? But stalking is a pattern of harassing a person. It's a pattern of either constantly calling them, constantly following them, constantly putting that fear in them so that they have control over you. Physical, this one is the one that most people are aware of. That's the hitting, slapping, pinching, shoving, all those physical interactions. And then sexual. Obviously, this is the one that's the hot topic right now, but that's any type of forceful act in a sexual way from one partner to another or one person to another.
Yeah, so with these, we like to also point out that physical abuse, again, a lot of these, of course, are physical abuse, but there are more subtle things that are happening within relationships that we won't even recognize. Now, I don't know of a healthy relationship where you poke someone in the chest, or you stomp their foot, or pinch them if they do something that bothers you, or talk to someone that bothers you. We also know that if somebody grabs your wrists and tells you that I don't care that you don't want to talk about this now, that is physical abuse. If somebody blocks your entryway or your exit to a door, that's also physical abuse. Somebody just pushing you on the bed and then you think, okay, it didn't hurt, it was a soft landing. That kind of stuff is still physical abuse. And with sexual abuse, like Kristie said, the hot topic, there's a new law that's been passed about something called revenge porn, because that's big in the high schools as well, where somebody is sent a consensual picture, whether they're under 17 or over, because when people are under 18 or 17 sending these pictures, they're disseminating child pornography. So that's something that we just point out, because it also doesn't mean the police are coming in and raiding everyone's phone. It's when people don't do these kinds of things responsibly or consensually or respectfully, and they decide to send it to the entire school. That's when parents and teachers and police do get involved, and students have been charged with felonies. So it's important to remember, even somebody who threatens their partner, if you break up with me, you know I have all those pictures of you, that threat is a crime, and that's something that victims should be aware of, because when you're in high school, that seems like the end of the world, when the entire school has seen you in a way that you didn't want to be seen. So it's important to remember that they're protected against revenge porn and against the sharing of those kinds of pictures, and of course, any physical act or harassment.
Yeah, we've all had those dreams, right, where we're like, oh my God, I woke up naked in the high school. So people are actually making those dreams reality for people, and it's wonderful now that we have this new law that actually protects them, and it's important for them to know that that's something that is there for them, and that their bodies are their own, and it does not, just because you break up with someone or you don't want to date someone does not mean that they have that permission. We see this with young people where they think that this is the norm. They think that this is completely what should happen when they're dating someone in high school especially, that they should have the password to all of their social media and their phones and their text messages. That I should tell my partner my location and share it on my phone so they know where I am every second of the day and I know where they are every second of the day. Young people have become so accustomed to this that they don't realize that this is not love.
That whole kind of mistaking obsession with love kind of thing is how we see this kind of stuff escalating. That's the confusion that we see. That whole, you need to be around me all the time and not talk to your friends. Was there anything else you noticed in that video that seemed, maybe things that you see in your line of work or things that seemed weird? Anything? Yeah.
When she said like I don't, or somebody said like I don't care if that's your chemistry partner or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of disconnecting you from people that maybe have been in your life all your life. People who you're just doing a project with and you feel nervous to tell your partner about it. They started saying to delete that number and you can't talk to that person. So we reiterate and focus on how important communication is and how that can change an unhealthy relationship to a healthy one. You talk about the fact that you want to share passwords and your partner doesn't. That doesn't mean you're in an unhealthy relationship. It means you communicate and compromise and decide both what you're going to do. So that's where we have these ideas, especially even with gender roles within relationships, kind of believing that, no, it's true, some people are up here and some people are down here, and that's how our relationship will be, and that contributes to the violence that can escalate and take place. So that's what we were talking about as well, where it's kind of hard, and that's what we're here for, because it is hard to recognize those fine lines and to differentiate between when does it become an unhealthy relationship to when does it become an abusive relationship. Because maybe you just never set boundaries in your relationship. You don't know that your partner doesn't like holding hands in public because they have clammy hands like me, and then they try to grab your hand in public and you pull away. Now you're fighting over what, you don't love me, you don't want to be seen with me in public because of this and that. And now you're fighting over the fact that, no, it was just that I'm not into holding hands in public. Communication would have completely changed that from an unhealthy relationship to a healthy one. Also, these ideas that these are things that are common in friendships, even in relationships. Maybe you have a relationship where that banter goes back and forth and you joke with each other and you make fun of each other. And maybe you have that best friend that when you get 30 texts from them, you're not worried. You just know that maybe you overslept or you had plans. That jealousy calling, we all maybe have seen that meme or heard it in school where, you know, when your best friend or when your friend calls your best friend their best friend, and how that kind of stuff can make us jealous. So these kinds of things are seen. Maybe you have a shared Instagram account for your artwork, whatever. But when it gets to a point that someone is controlling you, they're making you feel bad when they're insulting you or degrading you. And that idea of frequent communication turns into stalking, and you better tell me where you are, and you better give me your password. And then they make it seem like they're doing you a favor. I should smash your phone because you won't let me see it. Meanwhile, you're just texting your mom, and they say, I should smash your phone because you're so sneaky, but I'll just let you give me the password. And then you feel like, wow, thank God they didn't hit me or smash my phone. And that's where these fine lines need to be drawn. Checking your phone without permission, without consent. And isolation is a huge part of these kinds of things. Of course, maybe you want to spend time with your friends, but when you are making your partner disconnect from things that they love, you say, skip practice, or I feel like your soccer team gets too much of your attention. They don't even know what's good for you, whatever. Your friends don't know what's good for you. I feel like your parents hate me. Maybe we should hang out at my place more often. And all of a sudden, you have no one to turn to when the abuse does escalate to physical violence. And that's why it's so important to recognize the signs and to draw the lines and to set boundaries in our relationships.
And it's always hard too for kids, because if you saw in the video, a lot of times it's followed up with the, but I love you. Mm-hmm. So they get very confused by seeing those fine lines followed by that word that to them they've known for so long to mean a positive.
Mm-hmm. You want to take this one?
So why we're going to focus on youth. So a lot of you here probably work with young people. And why is it so important? Because people need to understand that this happens all the time. 16 to 24-year-olds actually have the highest rate. Most people don't think of that because they're just teenagers, or they're just starting out in college, or they're not having real adult relationships yet, but it happens, right? Violent behavior actually starts between 12 and 18. So that high school time is when you're first going to see these young people developing these violent behaviors, developing these stalking behaviors, these controlling, escalating behaviors. And the severity of intimidating their partner is something that gets greater in cases established in adolescence. So when you're starting off with young people doing this when they're younger, it's just going to get worse. It's just going to become a bigger and bigger problem. So it is so important for us to focus on them before. Focus on them so they understand the difference between their feelings and communicating those feelings and controlling somebody else, right?
Exactly, that's a great point, that there's a fine line between that as well. Communicating your feelings versus controlling someone, compromise versus sacrifice. It's hard to recognize, and that's why sometimes you're not taught this at home either. We train and we teach about domestic violence as well, and that's actually happening in the home between parents. So if you grew up in a home where violence equals love, it's kind of hard to just assume that you're going to have a happy, healthy relationship and start that way right away. So if you do kind of recognize the spectrum and how that can contribute to it, how certain views and attitudes about different genders and different sexualities, how that contributes to how you feel and how you treat these people, and how this kind of stuff can contribute to dating violence and the escalation all the way to that point.
And even if kids grow up in a happy, healthy home, they don't realize the abuse either, because they don't always see the ins and outs of their parents' relationship. They don't know if their parents share passwords. They don't know if their parents have location on each other. I know that that's something I discussed with my 4-year-old, that no, Daddy and I don't share our location with each other. So when they start having relationships with somebody and they see other people doing it, or they hear about it on social media, they may think it's a norm, even though it's not something necessarily that they grew up thinking that violence is normal for them. You know, healthy relationship is normal for them, but they just don't know all those ins and outs because it's not something that we're often taught as young people.
Absolutely.
So 1 in 10 high schoolers, students, have actually been purposely hit, slapped, or physically harmed by a partner. 1 in 10. So that means every little group that you see walking down the halls, at least one of them has actually been physically harmed by their partner. That's a really high number.
And these statistics incorporate all types of relationships. They incorporate same-sex relationships, heterosexual relationships, and we also see more predominantly in high schools that sometimes the male ends up, because with domestic violence, statistics prove that men are often the perpetrator and women are often the victim. That's just through tons of research. Now, in these cases in high schools, you may even recognize that a lot of times the boys are being abused. And after we go up and give our presentations, it will be a lot of the boys who come up and say, my girlfriend is in college in California and she still controls me, because she tells me every time I try to go out with my friends, I'll break up with you if you do that, you'll be alone and you'll never find anyone else. And that's how they are being controlled, and how young girls are making checklists and making these unrealistic expectations for their partners. So we do see a lot more of that equality in both, unfortunately, genders, and all genders being victims in high school.
And also girls, boys are often taught you don't hit a girl, right? But girls don't always get that same phrase, don't hit boys, doesn't come out. Boys should never hit a girl, you should never hit a woman, don't hit a woman. Because we've been so ingrained about the domestic violence and that men are more the perpetrators. So a girl smacking her boyfriend, well, I can't say anything about that, I'm a guy. So it's not really talked about in the same way. The female partners should not be hitting their male partners just as much as male partners should not be hitting their female partners, and it's not talked about as much.
Exactly. So, and of course, again, this incorporates all those forms of physical abuse. It doesn't have to be a punch to the face to be physical abuse. A punch next to your face is just enough to let you know that they're in control. Even a raised fist is just enough. They never have to hit you again. And you know to either stop what you're doing, saying, and whatever. And that is absolutely control if we think of that.
So 1 in 3 teens actually experience an abusive relationship of one form or another that we've already discussed. But only 33% ever tell. That's a really small number. And we're actually going to go over in a little bit exactly why they often don't tell, but just kind of sit with that number that only 33% say something.
And in these cases, we often see that a child will more likely, or a youth will more likely turn to another youth or another friend, a peer within school, rather than an adult. It depends on the relationship and connection that those teachers have and the guidance counselors have, but we do see that youth turn to peers often if they're going through something like this. So arming their youth with these kinds of this knowledge and resources can be really helpful, because if they can turn to their friend and their friend could be the one saying, that's normal. You should expect that in relationships. That's just how they are. And then that constant cycle continues. So that's why it's important that we are knowledgeable, that we are incorporating this in schools.
So as Liz was talking about before, when we were talking about the 1 in 10, it does incorporate all types of relationship, but the LGBTQ youth actually experience an equal or higher rate of abuse in their relationships. And they have all those special barriers that most heterosexual couples don't also face, because they're also trying to figure out their own sexual identity, their gender identity, how they fit into the world, if they have a support network, you know, if their parents are supportive, if their friends are supportive. So on top of all of those life changes that they're experiencing, this is also something that they're managing through as well. And it's, again, not as talked about the same way, because a girl hitting another girl is not always looked at as abuse. A boy hitting a boy, they're just having a fight. It's we had a fight in the schoolyard. It's not looked at in the same way. So it's really important that we also talk about that group of people.
Yeah, exactly. That physical abuse is taking place, where we think of it as maybe a cat fight. That's the one term I'll get in the high schools. Or the guy should just fight back. But we also like to point out, you should never fight back in a relationship. That's automatically a sign. And we also see some different ways that this community can be abused. Maybe threatening to out someone or threatening to reveal their sexuality is another thing that people use in these kinds of relationships. So just another reason why it's maybe harder to get help and to get out of something like that. So when we're talking about this sexual violence piece, we see that, and again, these statistics are just from children who are reporting these kinds of things. So we see 43% of teen girls, 30% of teen boys, and almost 80% of trans youth or gender nonconforming youth experience some form of sexual violence, which is just unwanted touching. Sexual assault is touching somebody sexually without their consent. This kind of stuff is happening every day in the high schools. They call it all different things, maybe scooping, maybe cuffing, but that means that they're running around and touching females' chests. We have the idea that Kristie said that it doesn't go both ways, that if a girl slaps a guy's butt in the hallway, it's just funny and everyone can laugh, when he is absolutely going to feel violated or uncomfortable in that way. So,
but he's often told, don't say anything, it's just a girl,
right,
smacking your butt, man up. So they don't look at it in the same way, and it's important that they understand that that is still something that's not okay. They are still being violated. It is something that they should learn, that their body is their own to only give permission to touch.
Which is something that we like to teach even younger than 12. When they're little, we just let them know that your body is your own. That if you tell me to stop, maybe you just decide that you want to play with their hair, brush their hair, and they don't like it, and they say stop. We have to stop. These little things let children know that no has to be respected. That can teach them to respect no as well, and to not think that they're entitled to these kinds of things. So any kind of touching, and we'll also hear, well, that happens all the time. It's so normal. Well, yeah, it's so normal because people just wish it would stop, and they try to ignore it and pretend it never happened. If you did get, you were the 10th person who slapped that girl's butt or that guy's butt that day, he can grab your hand and take you to the principal or the police, and you will get in trouble. So just because, yeah, it happens all the time and it's so normal doesn't mean that it's okay. It's just that people ignore it and try to make it go away. But you can get in trouble, and that's important. And we also point out that it's not always about getting in trouble. People are like, where's the line when it's like legal to illegal? Is that really what you're worried about when you're picking a partner or engaging in a sexual act? Or when is it going to be rape? Like, no, we should be just comfortable the whole time. So the idea that most of these things are happening by other students within the school. These students who don't conform to this gender identity or who are transgender. These students who are not understood as well. Sometimes that's a reason that they're at a higher risk for this kind of stuff. When your own parents don't accept you and they put you out on the street and you're homeless, that will absolutely raise your risk and make you more vulnerable to these kinds of things. So it's just something to remember as far as support for these kinds of kids. Now, the reason that we do have to do this as well is because just like Yardley Love's parents, 82% of parents of high school students think dating abuse is not an issue in high schools. This isn't a thing. They're not being physically violent. Who cares if they have to, check each other's phones and be obsessed with each other and isolate each other from their friends? That's not an issue. 81% of parents said, okay, if it was going on within my child's life, I would know what was happening. But almost 60% of parents couldn't identify that their child was in an abusive relationship until, for Yardley Love's parents, it was too late, or for some parents, it's luckily that they're getting intervention and that they have arrived at the safe center, or they're seeing a guidance counselor, or they've ended that relationship. That's when they notice that, wow, that relationship was controlling and unhealthy and unequal. They're all the same thing. So that's where we can also give you our hotline number. That's what I would put up there. Alright, so yeah, that video touched on a lot of different behaviors and signs also. Would anyone like to point any of those out? I can. So, the first one, I think, I've noticed that the love bombing is what they call it. So that's when a relationship starts and escalates so quickly, where we saw that his status after 1 week, they were in a Facebook relationship, he's saying, I love you so much, you're mine forever. That was after 1 week. That's kind of the point where you're still getting to know the person, communicating about boundaries and stuff like that. So in their case, it kind of went really fast. It also highlighted the cycle that we see, where he was guilting her into doing things and then making her feel bad about them, and then would say, I'm sorry, babe, everything's okay. And it also highlighted that whole social media piece, where that's a big part of relationships today. We'll only see the bae goals, hashtag relationship goals, and things like that. So when we're seeing that, we're only seeing half the story. Because behind that post of her little cute teddy bear that people will comment on, like, you're so lucky, your relationship is so great, that teddy bear was an apology for the way that he called her disgraceful and shameful and disgusting the night before. And that's what we're seeing. So that's why it is important to look a little deeper, because we are being swarmed with all these perfect kind of relationships that maybe that couple that is just so happy all the time and cute and honeymoon phase, and then all of a sudden they're fighting all the time. And you have that couple that you're like, oh, some days they're great and some days they hate each other. What's up with them? That's important. That it could be that cycle where they get nervous and then they're in love and then they apologize and the incident happens. So it's important to be aware of those kinds of things within the video, how quickly it went, how different,
We've all seen it. Everybody's, I'm sure, like, if you look back either at the students that you work with or the places that you work with, I'm sure everyone can close their eyes and picture a young couple like this. And we always hear all the time about how much, I wish my Facebook page life was actually my real life, right? Because we all put up our perfect pictures, the cute pictures of my kids, not my kids tearing each other's eyes out. We put up the cute picture of my boyfriend sending me a teddy bear, not my boyfriend screaming at me. Right, of me and my parents at these wonderful vacations, not my parents fighting with each other. So it's always that part where, and young people are very notorious for it. They put up all the wonderful things about their relationship, their friendships, things like that. So it's very important that you take those things on the surface level, that we're also communicating with them, the parents are communicating with them, the teachers are communicating with them, to make sure that, all right, yeah, you put up a cute picture of a bear because my boyfriend gave that to me. Well, what was the bear for? Why did you get the bear, right? To understand. And it's wonderful. Yes, give bears. They're awesome for the right reasons.
Exactly. Right? And that's where we talk about just little things like supporting what you like and not just feeling like what your partner likes is cool. So it could be getting a teddy bear, but it could be maybe taking steps in your life. If you have a partner or a friend and you decide that you're going to go to therapy or get extra help, there's a difference between a partner who is like, that's really great, I'm proud of you, here's a gift of appreciation, versus a partner who's like, I always knew you were crazy, I always knew you were stupid, I hope that you get the help you need. And these are relationships that we really are seeing.
Or pulling you away from those things too. No, don't go to extra help, stay with me. You don't need to, don't worry about that. Or you don't need to go on that family vacation, stay with me.
And that's why we want to just make sure that we know the right questions to ask and then how to respond if we get an answer that maybe we don't want to hear. Where instead of those relationships on Instagram where maybe you're either saying one hand, you're so lucky, I'm so jealous, you're so perfect, or you realize your friend doesn't hang out with you as much. Like Ashley in that video was a good friend. Other friends might say, oh my gosh, you're so annoying, you're always with your partner, forget you, you're not a good friend, and that's that isolation piece. So we need to arm, like I said, students with, when you ask your friend, instead of saying, you're so perfect, I'm so jealous, asking, are you okay? How's it going with your partner? How are things going? And then when you hear something you don't want to hear, you have to be able to respond. If they're saying, I'm afraid of them, or they hurt me, or they forced me to do something, we have to know what to say, and that's why these things are important.
But back to when we had said 33% of students are the only ones that report, this is why. Because a lot of times, they just want to forget about it. They don't want to talk about it. You know, your boyfriend called you a name. You don't want to think about the fact that your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your partner called you a name. You just want to forget that it occurred, right? They're afraid what's going to happen. So Liz was talking a lot about things that happen legally. A lot of times, kids don't want to go through that process because that means it has to be discussed with their parents. It has to be discussed with school. It's going to be out for everyone to hear and to see. So a lot of times, they don't want to talk about it because of that reason. Or if they think it's going to get worse, right? They may think that, all right, yeah, he was taking my phone to see who I was talking to, and if I say something or I let somebody else know, maybe next time he'll hit me, or he'll break my phone, or he'll scare me more than he already has. Their friends tell you, their friends will be mad at them. So, you know, your friends are going to sit there and maybe say to you, like, see, I told you not to go out with him. Or you're always with him and you're never out with me anymore, so, you know, why are we even friends? You know how Liz was mentioning before, Ashley was a good friend. She stuck around. She kept saying to her, you know, where are you? I haven't seen you in a while. Sometimes friends do the opposite. They actually think it was their fault. So people will think back, all right, well, you know, maybe I grabbed him at the wrong time. He just walked in the door. Or, you know, he was studying for that test and I interrupted him by asking him something. You know, I really need to think about when I ask questions or when I interrupt him or how I hold him or hug him or where I do it. And nobody will believe them. So that's a big thing. Kids think that no one will actually believe them.
Just wanted to add, I also hear a lot of kids say that they don't want to be alone, that they would rather this than be alone.
Correct.
And that's why they don't talk about it, because they're not willing to
make the steps. Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. They oftentimes, you know, they'd rather be in a bad relationship than be in no relationship. Because either A, they have this thought in their head that they should be in relationships, even though that they're young people, developing, learning, they should be experiencing a lot of different things in life, not really being focused on one specific relationship all through their high school years. But that's kind of what they see. They see it on TV, they see it in social media. You know, they think that, oh yeah, now I'm in high school, so now I need to be in these adult relationships. So absolutely, you're right. And the biggest thing is they don't know how. So young people are often not taught help-seeking behavior. You know, parents, a lot of them do tell their children to come and talk to me about anything. But a lot of times kids either don't know how to start the conversation, aren't sure that, yes, I can go and talk to my parent, but I don't know what they're going to say afterwards. I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble, because again, they kind of think it's their fault in a way. And then they're also not aware of who to go to outside of their parents if they're not comfortable talking to their parents. So part of what we teach when we're teaching healthy relationships with young people is we actually teach them to identify a trusted adult. Who is someone in your life that you can go and talk to no matter what the topic? That you know that they're not going to yell at you, they're not going to tell you that you're in trouble, they're not going to tell you you're wrong, they're going to sit and they're going to hear you. We actually help them identify that person. And if they're not able to on the spot, we help them go through people in their lives. So it's really important for young people to have someone that they can go to. It may be you as their school personnel. I have a lot of young people that actually say to me, oh yeah, I have, you know, such and such a teacher at school that I know I can go and talk to. And it might be that you're their aunt, their uncle, their family friend, their neighbor, somebody that they can go to.
Yeah, absolutely. So There's plenty of reasons why students are not coming forward or feeling like people are not going to want to not believe them that this stuff can even happen. Or maybe they don't even know that what's going on is abuse. Like we said, they'd rather be in a bad relationship than no relationship, but to them it might feel like this is great. Because in an unhealthy relationship, that person has made themselves to be your savior and your knight in shining armor, whether it's a male or a female. This person has done everything they can to make sure you feel like you need me, whether that's by just telling you, I heard your friends talking about you, and I heard your parents talking about you, or whatever it may be, to just make them feel like, wow, I do need this person more than anyone, and without them, I'm lost. That's exactly what they're trying to do, so that would make it really hard for them to get out of that. Now, what we're also trying to point out is that we're hoping to not be at this point. That's our goal, of course, is to teach healthy relationships where they form that way. And we're never having to wonder, how is this child going to get out of a violent relationship? We should be teaching that men and women understand what relationships and communication and how to form relationships, so we never have to worry about resources for youth in violent relationships. It should be that women and men understand consent, and they understand boundaries, and they understand how to love and trust and these kinds of things. We heal before, so that we're not looking for resources and help after the fact. So that's what we can do.
So what can we do? A lot of us sit and come to trainings like this. We become aware of the resources for young people. So if we're working in the schools, or working in agencies, or we're just a person in the neighborhood, having and knowing all the different resources that young people can go to, knowing the Safe Center's hotline off the top of your head, so that if you interact with somebody, you know right away to call, that it's totally free, it's anonymous, they can speak to somebody right away. Or any other resources, so the ones that make the video, to show them, because sometimes when we're talking to young people, yeah, okay, sure, thanks for the information, got it. But those videos, when I show that video in my workshop, I literally see jaws drop. Because they all have seen it. They all either experienced it themselves, or they know the friend that experienced it, and it clicks in their head. So having also those resources to show them and to have available to yourself. Incorporating healthy relationships into the curriculum. So I don't know about everybody in this room, but I sure as heck did not get a healthy relationship education when I was going through high school.
I know I was taught abstinence in my sex ed. They put a piece of tape, they put it down, and then they ripped it off, and they were like, look, now it doesn't stick. That's you if you have sex. You're not as good. You can't do things as well because you're this tainted piece of tape. That is not the way that we should be teaching youth, because then they never learn. We never learned about consent. They give you a banana and show you how to put a condom on it. That's not teaching children how to have healthy relationships and healthy sexual interactions. That's how we get to the point that we're like, how do people rape people and think it's okay? It starts from when they're younger and are never taught consent and respect, and that's what we're doing with these kinds of programs.
And relationships is being a person 101. Everybody is in a relationship in one way, shape, or form. It's not all intimate relationships. Because these unhealthy relationships are happening no matter what. We have all seen the bullying epidemic.
Hazing and things like that.
It's the same thing. People don't understand how it is to be in a healthy relationship. It's not okay for me to sit and call you names and get everybody around you to sit and point at you and laugh at you. It's an unhealthy relationship. So teaching this information to kids is essentially teaching them how to be positive people in our community, right? Encourage the education of abuse for parents and guardians. So it's not just teaching the kids, it's also teaching the parents and the guardians. So when we do our workshop, we always encourage community personnel to sit in on our workshops, because it's really important for them to understand the material that we're teaching to the young people so they can reinforce it. So when I say to such and such, did you use your speaker-listener technique? And they go to their guidance counselor, I was trying to use that, they told me to use this technique in the workshop, and you know exactly what it is that we're talking about. And you can reinforce them, yes, remember that was week 2, we sat and we got into partners, and I spoke first, and I rephrased things back to you, do you remember that? And you're actually able to help them with that, right? And you're modeling this positive communication. So teaching parents, adults, people in the community that kids watch what they see. So when they see people communicating in a positive way, and they don't see people talking over each other or screaming, even if it's something that you're disagreeing on, it's okay to disagree. I tell the kids all the time, disagreements happen. It's about how we disagree that matters, right? And equip them, like I mentioned before, about the help-seeking behaviors. So teaching them how to go to people in their community to ask for help. How do we do it? What resources are available to us? When do we do it? And be present for kids. So if someone stops you and you're super, super busy, but they have something to talk about, I know it sounds bad, but drop what you're doing. Listen to that kid that's trying to tell you that you may be saving that child's life. Take 5 minutes, listen to what it is they have to say, and then you can go from there. Be available to people. You know, when we say my door is always open, don't just say it, live it, right?
And that's why it's important as well. Working with youth is to just kind of check ourselves and understand our internal biases and how we feel about certain things, because that can contribute to this kind of stuff as well. If we have kind of like a heteronormative bias and we feel like we can't even accept other kinds of relationships or people, then that can be a barrier when that youth is coming and looking for help. And this idea that heteronormative kind of dynamic does contribute to the whole idea that certain people have certain roles in relationships. And we break that down completely as well in our Safe Dates program that we're going to talk about, because it's true that they think certain relationships, heterosexual relationships, certain people have certain roles and that certain things are their, you know, place and other things are not their place. But I like to point out that it should be like any other relationship. A heterosexual relationship can be like a same-sex relationship or a friendship that's the same sex, and that's how we should be aiming for. So my little story that I give to the kids, and of course I'm talking about someone else and not myself when I say this. So I had a friend, right, who always forgot her keys. And she was with her best friend. They're outside, right? And we realized, she doesn't have her key, right? So we're like, what are we gonna do? This turned into, with, you know, a person and their best friend, it turns into an adventure. How are we gonna get in the house? I'm like, can I still fit in the basement window like I thought I could? I couldn't. So we tried all these different things. We were laughing about it until eventually we knew it's not the end of the world. Same thing happened, okay? My friend forgets her key a lot, I get it. But we were outside. She's outside with her partner this time. And when she can't find her key, her partner's like, again, like, how stupid are you? You can't remember one simple thing. How are you going to get anywhere in life if you can't remember a freaking key? When it could have gone either way, we shouldn't be thinking, well, it's a relationship. There are roles, and I should have known my place, and I should have been better. No, it's a friendship. Relationships are friendships. Everything could be positive and fun and an adventure, and that's how we can teach them. And then it turns into communication. Maybe you should carry your key on your neck like Zoe 101, or think of another way that you don't forget your key. That's different than degrading someone and making them feel like because of this one thing you won't get anywhere. That's exactly what abusers do. They make it feel like, I'll never let you forget your key, so you need me. And that's exactly how we get caught up in this kind of stuff. So these are the kinds of things that we just let people know we don't want to say. When you're in a dating violence relationship, when you've been sexually assaulted, somebody is stripping your power away. So for us to be doing the same thing, like you should do this and I know what to do, we're just reiterating that power dynamic that is abusing them. So we need to just let them know that I'm here for you. We're not going to let them know this wouldn't have happened if you didn't do this, if you didn't go to that party, if you didn't date that person, if you should just forget about
language that we hear all the time, right? There's that, where Liz is saying when you're saying to somebody like you shouldn't, we hear that all the time about victims of sexual assault.
And it could be the best, they have the best intentions, you know? That they just say to you, you should really cut back on the drinking. That could make a person never tell about their assault ever again, just because you thought you were helping. You should do this, you should go to the hospital. It just makes them feel like that someone else has the power again. So yeah, we do hear that with sexual assault especially.
Or the wrong clothes, or well, you were poking at them, or you checked their phone too, or whatever it is that they may say. These are hurtful comments. We need to make sure that we're looking at the actual act as opposed to what the person didn't do.
And of course, understanding the dynamics helps us to speak about these kinds of things. We don't want to give wrong information and say, no, you're right, your partner's mean because they don't let you see their phone and they don't let you have sex with them and they don't let you do this. That's not giving the right information either. We have to recognize both sides of it. So that's where we just point out, which I'm sure working with children you already know how to interact, but just some tips that help me as an advocate. I go to the hospitals and I'm a crisis counselor. I see people that have just been assaulted, raped, human trafficked, domestic violence, all these kinds of things. So I have to know what to say literally in that exact moment that's not going to make them feel any kind of way, uncomfortable, upset. So I just, let them know that I'm here for you, I believe you, that nobody deserves this kind of thing. And sometimes I don't even want to talk about the issue at hand. Sometimes just being there for the person and talking about whatever, what are you going to do this weekend? And just actually caring about what they're saying. When you're in an abusive relationship, you've never had someone that actually listens and cares. So these kinds of things are important. If they say, I don't want to tell anyone else, I don't want to go to the police, I don't want to get help, of course we want to be the people who rescue. That's what I want to do as well, but I've had to learn how to just be there as support. We're never able to rescue anyone. We have to just let them know, okay, if that's what you want to do, I'm here for you. If you want to just try to heal on your own, I'm here for you. If you want to go to the police, I'm here for you. And there's so many different ways to just let them know that you have the power, and the resources, of course, are helpful.
And also too, before we jump to this, if you don't feel comfortable saying that you believe the person, because maybe you don't have all the facts, maybe you're not really sure what happened, use those other words. Thank you for telling me. What can I do to help you feel safe? Who can we call? What can we do for you? That way you don't have to put yourself always in a position where you're saying it, because you may not have all the information, especially in high school. We do see the revenge things every once in a while. So this way you're still making them feel comfortable and heard, and that they're able to speak with you in a trustworthy way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So also those other phrases too.
Absolutely, without kind of like picking sides or putting the blame on someone. You can absolutely just validate feelings in other ways. Right. Just being like, wow, that must be hard.
That's not your job, is to pick whether you believe this student or that in certain situations. You're there for someone to talk to, or as community providers, depending on what your role is. So it's important.
Absolutely.
So, as we've talked about before, we do have curriculum, relationship and education workshops that we can actually bring to the schools, to the community. So this is one of them. This is the one that I run. It's called Project Forward. We use an evidence-based curriculum called Love Notes 2.1. It actually can help kids from 14 to 29 is what we do. We can come to you, so we can actually be present in your schools. We can be present at your community agencies. And the young people actually get to learn a whole host of different things. They start off with a whole trajectory of them learning more about themselves. Because we all know you can't be a positive person in a relationship unless you're in a positive place, right? So who are you? What's your personality like? What do you have from your family, right? Is those things positive or are they negative? What are your expectations out of life? What are your goals? What do you want to do? And all sorts of things, not just relationships. Then we take them through what a healthy relationship is, and not just relationship in the intimate sense, but relationship in all different types. Your friendships, your relationship with your family, your relationship with your coworkers, your teachers. We teach them what dangerous love is, right? What is intimate partner violence? What are the fine lines? What do we do if we see this, right? That signs video is actually something we use within our workshop, so they actually get to see it. Then we also go through with them healthy communication. So what is healthy communication? Do you actually listen, or do you just hear things? When you speak, are you speaking clearly, or are you just saying things just to shut people up? Are you communicating what really is going on inside of you? Right? Are you interpreting things negatively? Do you use timeouts correctly? Or do you just silent treatment people? Do you just walk away while someone's talking? Right? So those are the types of things that we go over with them. We go over safe sex. So we don't use the tape. We don't use bananas. But we do go through a whole host of safe sex practices. Not just condoms, not just abstinence. We give them all the information. We actually have a wonderful collaboration with Planned Parenthood, where they give us a whole kit so the kids can actually see the different type of contraceptives that's available to them. But we also go through, are you ready? Have you really thought about how this is going to impact you psychologically and emotionally? Right? And if you decide today, yes, I'm going to sleep with my partner, and then you do, and then you wake up the next morning, I don't want to do that again. That's okay. How do I communicate that effectively to my partner? How do we have that conversation? How do I do self-care to make sure that I'm okay? Right? We go through how to break up. So kids often send text messages, change their Facebook statuses, put something on Instagram, then all of a sudden they're single, have their friend go tell so-and-so that we're not together anymore. So we actually go through the healthy ways for them to break up, and then how do they take care of themselves afterwards? And how do they make sure that they're at a place that they're ready to have another relationship again in the future? Right? And we also go through how healthy relationships raise healthy children. So what they do and what they say and what they model is what their kids are going to see. So if that's something that they aspire to, is to be parents, we encourage them to engage in the success sequence. Get yourself in order, take the proper steps, even if it's a young person that has had an unplanned pregnancy. The world has not ended. You can still go back to your success sequence. You can still go forward. You can still improve your relationships. You're always taking a step forward to improve yourself. So like I said, we can be in the high schools present for the students to learn, and it's very important to incorporate that. High schools, colleges, community providers.
Is it, you said workshop, is it
Yes.
multiple sessions?
Yes, it's 8-week sessions, for once a week for 2 hours each, but we're not stuck to that. So we can do whatever works for anybody. If you want to do 1-hour sessions for 12 weeks, that works, or 14 weeks. You know, whatever works, a longer session. We just have to do a certain amount of hours.
Do you have any programs for middle school?
Middle school we don't, they have to be 14, but I don't know if you're licensed to do the middle school.
Yeah,
St.
we
Luke's.
do. The Safe Days program that we're going to talk about goes from, like, we're in schools that are 7 to 12, so they're not actual middle schools, but it's like the 7th and 8th graders we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have gone as young as 7th grade, but then we've also trained like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts that were younger, so we just tailor the program to the youth. So yeah, we could do all kinds of workshops for any age. Through
And both of our workshops are free. If you want to hop onto YouTube,
Yeah.
you will, yeah.
So that one was through Central Nassau Guidance, the Project Forward program, and then we can talk about Safe Dates from the Safe Center. So like I said, as an advocate at the Safe Center, I serve survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, child abuse, and human trafficking. They're all under one roof at the Safe Center. We have trafficking advocates, we have SVS, the Special Victims Squad, we have Child Protective Services. So that's all at the Safe Center in Bethpage. It's a free nonprofit where you can get counseling and advocates like myself and educators also like myself. So this is the program that I go and do in the high schools. Our program is 4 sessions. So we come into a classroom, into a health class. We're in Cary, Floral Park, Plainview, Bethpage, Hempstead, Long Beach Alternative School. We're in most of the schools all around Nassau. So we come in for 4 sessions. We talk about healthy relationships, what is a healthy relationship versus unhealthy relationships. We talk about bystander intervention and affirmative consent, how you can help a friend if they are in a situation that seems potentially harmful. Because we get that there's only like 2% of people committing these crimes, and then the other 98% is everyone who's like, none of my business, I didn't see a thing. So we give them actual tools so you don't have to feel afraid. You feel confident to be an upstander. And then we teach them about affirmative consent and understanding and practicing consent. And at the end of the session, I let them know that you can't get it wrong. And if you do, I'll meet you at the Safe Center, because I can't understand how people feel that way, that there's gray areas when it comes to consent, and that we can't really teach it in that way, and that teaching consent is like a joke, people will say, when that is something that will completely change the culture. If we lived in a consent culture, even the way we teach prevention, don't wear that, don't leave your drink there, don't walk alone. We teach it to men and women how to protect ourselves rather than practice consent and these kinds of things, understanding consent, and you won't ever be in that situation. There's a group of mothers now who are out there sad that their sons are in trouble, and in this case it was a group of men who committed a sexual assault, and now they're sad because their sons, they didn't know about consent. Well, now you can't get it wrong. If you put this kind of curriculum, if you teach your children about consent and the importance of it, you'll never have to be that mom talking about how they're entitled child, unfortunately. They all start their stories the same way. My child was perfect. They were #1 at this and that, and they never did anything wrong. Don't you see how you telling your kid that you can do no wrong can contribute to that idea that they are entitled to things, like Brock Turner, who just takes whatever he wants? So that's why it's so important, and that's how important we reiterate it. We talk about the different attitudes and behaviors, like we said, how gender norms and how it's not our fault that we live in a society who puts people in different places, but how to be ourselves and be aware rather than just following what everyone else tells us. That's how we talk about hazing as well. You're literally doing it because somebody 1,000,000 years ago told you that that's how fraternities work, that you sexually assault your friends and beat them just because someone else said so. Like, we need to be more cognizant, be aware, grow as ourselves rather than just being products of what everyone else says. That will change the culture. Our program is also free. Like I said, we come into the classroom. We come into the health classes for a period for 40 minutes, and we'll do that for 4 weeks, 1 day a week. And yeah, we get a lot of good feedback from the students and from the teachers, so that's something that we're offering up. I have some information on that as well.
You all got some.
We also explain how, especially in the high schools, it doesn't have to only be about sex. It could literally be about tea. It could be about anything. They cover all the bases. Prior consent is not consent. They come back to your room and they say yes, that they can take it away at any point, and we wouldn't just keep pouring hot liquid down their throats. So they can get that asking. We ask for everything. Can I sit next to you? Can I sit here? Can I play with your hair? Can I borrow this? Do you want to play ping pong instead of just smacking someone in the face with the ball? Like, we get the difference, but when it comes to sex, they're like, no, there's gray areas. No, there's really not. So,
and even with the tea kettle, they tell you, okay, I've spoken to you, I've asked you if you'd like some tea. Now the tea kettle is brewing, and by the time the tea is ready,
you might be like, whoa, that's too hot. Tea is too hot, and you don't
like
want to
tea.
join.
I like iced tea. Thanks.
So there you go.
Ice cubes in that. But it's very important for them to understand that. And this is a great video. Again, we shove things down their throats, but when they see things like this, it clicks a little bit more.
Except for
and these are great tools that we use when we're doing our workshops.
So yep, definitely just write on YouTube, consent is tea. So like we were saying, the bystander piece. You want to talk a little bit about it?
So if you are a bystander, we talk about the help-seeking behaviors. We want to make sure that we're being direct, we're delegating, and distract, right? So we want to make sure that we are active bystanders, that we're not those people that Liz was talking about before that are walking away saying, oh, that's not my business, I don't know what's going on, that we're being someone. And if we're not comfortable walking up to a situation, because we're not always sure if it's safe, to still make sure that you are calling 911. I myself have seen it before where I've seen a couple fighting in the parking lot, screaming at each other. So it's not a safe situation for me because I was with my children, but I did call 911 as I was getting to my car and let the police know. And literally as I was driving out of the parking lot, I heard the sirens, and I waited up a safer distance from the parking lot and watched as the police came over to check on them. So even if it's not something where you can actually step into physically, it's still a way to help people. It's still a way to be there for someone that if they're not in the situation, but maybe you saw something and they stepped away from their partner or the person, saying to them, are you okay? I'm here for you. I do know a place that you can go to or someone to talk to. So sorry, I know we're wrapping it up a little bit because we have only a few minutes left.
Yeah, so exactly, that we're not going to insert ourselves into a dangerous situation. But this could also be as simple as somebody says a racist joke or something, and you just, instead of laughing along, when someone makes a racist joke or a sexist joke, and then we all laugh, that person is empowered to go and take that joke. Yeah, when I go to college, I'll take it up there with me. And then you make that joke there, and then everyone thinks it's okay, and then all of a sudden, somebody's beating up a person of another sex or gender just because they put them down here. They dehumanize them everywhere they went. And that's why it does contribute, and it is important to stop it before and just be like, do you really feel that way? Sometimes I just ask them to explain, because some high schoolers will tell me, yeah, well, some girls ask for it, or some girls deserve it.
Some girls like it.
Right, and I'll just ask them, please explain to me what that means, and that's how you kind of just let them know, disempower that behavior. Don't take that to college, don't take that to the workplace, because it's not funny and it's not cool. And delegating is just letting someone else know. Maybe you can't step in, so you call the police, you tell an RA, you tell a security guard, you tell the guidance counselor. Or you just step in and scream that the cops are coming, and then magically underage people run away when you say the cops are coming. That's a distraction, and that's how we can do these kinds of things. Just de-escalate. We also want to point out, does anyone know about Title IX? Title IX within high schools and within colleges. So it's definitely big within colleges. There have been a few changes, but it doesn't mean that we are not still following the guidelines that Title IX put forth about students not facing any form of gender discrimination. So there are rights, just a few. You want to talk a little bit about them?
Yeah, those students do have a couple rights. I know we're only in a few minutes, so we're going to breeze through this. So we do have Title IX, we do have the Clery Act, depending on if you're in high school or colleges. Enough is Enough. We have the Campus Safe Act and Violence Against Women. These are all things that you can research. research. We are going to just briefly touch on the Title IX so you're aware, because that's one that does impact high school students.
So there are just processes. If a student says they want to file a complaint, they can file a complaint. Sometimes in high schools, the Title IX coordinator doubles as a social worker or as a counselor, or maybe you do have a specific Title IX coordinator. So there are options for students. Now, either one of these options does not involve the police. They are administrative processes that happen on campus. So you can either file a complaint and then the school would start an investigation into the situation, or you can just go to Title IX and ask for certain accommodations. That could just be that you have a class together, that you would rather take that class at another time, or change your dorm room because they live above you or below you. So there are things that can be taking place. It's not something that we can just say, well, I don't know what to do for you. There is help available for those students. Also, the idea that we can let them know if it's so serious. We've had students in college and high schools be stabbed, be strangled by their partners. So if it is so serious, they're being stalked, they're being harassed, they can file for a restraining order. It's something that we don't want to say, I don't know if you're eligible. As of 2008, teens can file for restraining orders and for orders of protection. So thank you so much for joining us. We have that information up front for you.
So we do have information about our workshops. All of our cards are on all of your chairs. If you are interested in having our workshops at your schools, community locations, please reach out to us. And find us on social media. All the kids do.
It's just the thing I like about you. Just the thing I like about you.